Joining me now is Mr. Mark Mitchell, the head pollster at Rasmussen. I had him on the other night to talk about evangelicals, and I asked him, well, are they going to vote? We're getting word that's like 40% aren't going to vote, and they're, what's the deal? And he said that's kind of serendipity because I'm actually running a poll on that, and now it is out. Welcome back, Mark.
Really happy to be here. Yeah, it was crazy the way it just lined up. And let me tell you, this thing is hot off the presses. I've only had about an hour with the crosstabs. It's election season. We're moving really fast. I'm pretty sure the intention is to get it up on the website tomorrow. And it was sponsored by Coral Ridge's Institute for Faith and Culture and some people that helped them back the poll. So because it's sponsored, everybody will be able to go and get the crosstabs themselves. And they're really going to have to pore over these. But in my opinion, the headline is, I think everybody was kind of a little freaked out a few weeks ago when some research came out and said that basically half of all people of faith aren't going to vote. And fortunately or unfortunately, we were not able to replicate that. So what we did is we asked thousands of American adults. We didn't screen for likely voters because we want to find the people who say they aren't going to vote. And we selected, we got almost 1,700 people who were Christians and Catholics, basically anybody who identified as evangelical Christian, Protestant, or Catholic. And what we found out is basically, a lot of stuff about what they think, how important their religion is to them, where they stand on the issues. But these people are going to vote. Now, I will say evangelicals say they're going to vote less than Protestants or Catholics. But it's not a huge signal. When you ask them about just their general election behavior, the likely voter screen, how often do you vote? All the time, most of the time, about half the time, occasionally, rarely, or never. Evangelical Christians say all the time 56%, but it's 75% of Protestants and 65% of Catholics. And so that's a really big difference. And when you ask them, are you going to vote in this November's general election, 21% of evangelicals already voted. Another 56% say they'll absolutely vote. So that's 77% right there. That's pretty good. 11% say may vote, but there were 8% of evangelicals that flat out said they're not going to vote. It was only 2% of Protestants and 5% of Catholics. Now, the reason that's important is because evangelical Christians in this poll went 61 points for Trump, only 29 points for Kamala Harris. But Protestants, it was tied, 48-48. And Catholics went Trump only by 5 points. So those people are also most likely to vote. Now, there's some other explanations before I get into why they say they're not voting. Evangelicals tended to be younger people here. Also, I think there's an aspect of financial means. The more established people in larger denominations, Protestants and Catholics, tend to be, I think, more set in their lifestyle and probably index as high voting because they're established. But the evangelicals who say they won't vote, we ask them why. 7% say they're not qualified to vote. 10% said unable. So right there, that's 17-18%. 27%, however, said they don't like the candidates. So in my opinion, if people want to increase the evangelical turnout, that's probably something that could be addressed right there. And then another 16% of them said it just wasn't that important to vote. So there's 43%, almost half of the people who say that they're evangelical and they're not voting. Another 16% are too busy. That gets you up to almost 60%. So in my opinion, those aren't very great reasons, especially when you get into the whys. But I don't think there's a chunk of 40 million evangelical Christians out there sitting it out. I just think that's fake news.
Wow. Okay, so we have I don't know, has this been published on your website yet?
Not yet. Okay, I'm telling you, I just literally put this together. You saw the file.
So right? There it is. There's the file right there.
It's
show
ugly.
It again. That's all right. You can show it again there, Caleb, if you want. There it is. So this is literally a scoop. He hasn't even had time to get the article out there. So recap. The bottom line is, what percentage of evangelicals are going to vote?
Evangelicals, where is it? 21% already voted, 56% will absolutely. That's 77%. Evangelical Christians roughly make up about 20% of the voting electorate in this country. So it's a pretty big block. And specifically in this sample, it was 21% of the people who identified as Christians or Catholics So it's 2/3 of that. So it's about, 15% of the electorate. So when almost 10% of 15% sits out, that's 1.5 of the electorate. And if that 1.5 votes Trump by 30 or 40 points, then you're talking about a half a point to, maybe closer to 1% that absolutely might sway to Trump. So it really does, it really could impact things, just not on the level of, I think, if they mobilized, they would really create a massive wave. But what is fascinating is just the issues and how different evangelical churches and Protestants, how they kind of think about life. Just this one, does your church or denomination perform same-sex marriages? 15% of evangelicals say yes, but it's 31% of Protestants, even fewer Catholics, 12% say yes. In terms of determining the future of America and our country, how important is the 2024 presidential election? This one's wild to me. Evangelicals only say very important, 71%, but 88% of Protestants. So Protestants, and I have another one. Let me try and find it.
Let me ask you real quick. How do you distinguish between Protestants and evangelicals? What? Because I know they're mainline Protestants, and then there's evangelicals. So is that when you say Protestants versus evangelicals, is the Protestant category more of your mainline, a little more progressive Protestants? Yeah,
I think that is. Let me look it up. Because we asked specifically, does the church that you
just call yourself an evangelical, anyone that's willing to call themselves an evangelical, the fact that they even know that word and they use it means they're willingly describing themselves as one that believes in the more fundamentals of the Christian faith, which tends to be the more conservative, pro-life, traditional marriage crowd.
Yeah. So it's hard to figure out where to draw the perimeter on this. So what we used as the screen for the poll is anybody who says, in response to which of the following best describes your faith or affiliation, evangelical Christian, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, atheist, and we threw out anybody who wasn't a Christian. And to be frank, I think a lot of people don't even necessarily know what the word denomination is, but we asked them, is the church you attend most frequently part of a large denomination? 51% of evangelical Christians said yes, which sounds kind of high, but I don't know what number you'd expect to see there. But it was 69% of Protestants. So a really massive difference. So definitely people who identify evangelical are in more, and they're also much happier with the direction of their church's denomination and their church leadership. 83% say they're happy with the direction of their denomination for evangelical. It's only 73% for Protestant or Catholic. But what we're talking about here is there are major fundamental differences, but nothing near like the difference between upper educated income and lower income and education, or graduate degrees, and definitely nowhere even close to party. But there are some interesting differences, like on abortion, for instance. Protestants say they're pro-choice, 50% to 40%, but evangelicals say they're pro-life, 57% to 29%. And Catholics are actually kind of split on that, which is really crazy considering sort of the history of the Catholic Church and their stance on abortion. And evangelicals, 29% of them flat out want all abortion illegal, but it's only 13% of Protestants, and 27% of Protestants actually want abortion legal after 6 months.
Whoa. Can you say that again?
Sorry, after 3 months. 16% of Protestants want abortion at any time. Another 11 say between 3 and 6 months. So 27% of Protestants are okay with abortion after 3 months.
Which tells me that these would be the Protestants that I would refer to as your main line, your more liberal Protestant denominations versus your conservative evangelicals.
Well, then there's also the aspect of we kept people in who say they don't attend church that often, right? And because there are plenty of extremely religious people that don't go, and there's people that do go that aren't religious at all.
And particularly with the internet, a lot of them are, because I know them, because we hold a Sunday night church service and I'm teaching through the book of Revelation, and a lot of them don't go to a church anymore because they can't find a Bible teaching conservative church. And so a lot of them are watching me at night. They're watching Dr. Andy Woods and his church service out of Sugar Land, Texas on Sunday morning. So a lot of them are extremely conservative. They just can't find a church in their community anymore. Of course, you know, you would think, oh, they don't go to church, therefore liberal. No, they do. They just attend church online.
Yeah. And when you combine it all together, again, so we're picking up very devout evangelicals and also not, and very devout Protestants and also not. But when you throw it all into the blender, how important is it to you that the President of the United States has religious morals? And 56% of evangelicals say it's very important, but only 40% of Protestants and 34% of Catholics. I thought that was a pretty stark difference. And then also this one, which of the following has the most influence on how you will vote in this election? Your social circle, family members, your personal experiences, the Bible, news, your political party or other. An evangelical Christian said personal experience, 38%. But number two was the Bible at 25%. Protestants, personal experience was 61%. The Bible's only 10%.
And you know, that doesn't shock me because, again, if we're talking, quote, Protestant versus evangelicals, the mainline liberal, more liberal Protestants, postmodernism is what got the mainline churches into the trouble they got into, because postmodernism was about experience. You know, truth is not created by God. It's based on your experience and your opinion. So that
your feelings.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, all faiths lead to God, of course.
That's right. Universalism, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about acceptance and not, you know.
No narrow way, right? No narrow way.
So when considering who to vote for, how important is it to apply biblical truth to the candidates and issues? I was pretty proud of this question. Evangelicals, 50% say very important. Another 24% say somewhat important. That's a combined total of 3/4 of evangelicals. But only 57% of Protestants say it's at least somewhat important. Only 30% very important. So there's a 20-point spread there as far as how important biblical truths are to the candidates and issues. And again, these people are only categorized by literally the words they say that describe their religion, Protestantism or evangelical Christians. And even Catholics are even way down there. Only half of Catholics say it's important to consider biblical truths when talking about politics.
Which tells me we totally have separated a Christian worldview, as we talked the other night, from law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, national security, which again, I find it wonderful that this is being sponsored by Coral Ridge. Is it Coral Ridge or is it Truths That Transforms? Which one is it?
Coral Ridge. Institute for Faith and Culture, yeah.
Because I for years, I worked with Dr. D. James Kennedy, who was the pastor at Coral Ridge Presbyterian, and he is one of the guys that greatly influenced me. I have a letter signed from him in my office, and he picked up my books in the early 90s and would offer them and interview me on his network. And Dr. Kennedy was one of the guys, you can go right on YouTube, type in Francis Schaeffer at Coral Ridge Presbyterian, and up pops Francis Schaeffer in the early 90s at D. James Kennedy's church, tied back to this group you're talking about, and they're teaching a biblical worldview to all these areas. Now, when guys like Francis Schaeffer and D. James Kennedy and these guys that I followed and grew up thanks to my parents in introducing me to these kind of people, that's who I grew up under. This is their books I was reading. These guys are not being replaced. What they're being replaced with is pastors that say, we don't want to talk about politics here. We just don't touch any of that. Like on October 7th, so many of our audience members said their pastor had nothing to say about the mass murder of Jews on October 7th. It was zero.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I've seen similar things on the issue of Ukraine, where I haven't seen a very nuanced view that understands that on both sides, people are dying. And really, it's more important, in my opinion, and a more biblical worldview is let's end this thing. Yeah. Let's get to peace.
Exactly.
Let's not drag it out. And that is not what you're hearing. So let me ask you, do those guys believe in the power of prayer? Because do you agree or disagree, prayer can impact the outcome of this election?
Oh, wow.
Evangelical Christians, 73% agree with that, 49% strongly. Only 30% of Protestants strongly agree with that statement. Half of evangelicals, less than a third of Protestants, and only 58% of Protestants at least somewhat agree. In fact, 30% of Protestants disagree with that statement, including 39% of Catholics in America. That's pretty crazy.
Whoa. So let me ask you this then, Mark, and wrapping it up, and then folks, we're going to go and get Naomi Wolf, and you guys need to tweet, text, email, Facebook, get her, True Social, everybody, because you know she's going to be dropping bombs tonight. Are there not going to be enough evangelicals voting to turn the election, or is that not something to worry about?
I think that they do represent, they represent as much of an opportunity as RFK voters did in August. And I know it's only about 11, 12 days to the election, and so there's not a lot of time. I think probably the outcome of this poll will be maybe that people breathe a little bit, safer about the fact that there's just not tens of millions of people sitting out. And so I think that's pretty important. But there's a lot of rich data here that people could look at and understand, if nothing else, that polls are a snapshot in time. And this, I think, really tells a lot about the psyche of people in America and what Christianity means. And I think it's fair to say there's some troubling stuff in here.
Yeah, because it seems there be a real disconnect between what the Bible says, our worldview, and how we apply it to how we govern our nation. I mean, that's the word politics, as you know, is derived from the word, the affairs of the city. And apparently, a lot of self-described Christians and evangelicals don't think that their biblical worldview has much to say about how you conduct the affairs of the city or a nation. Which, as we know, even the least religious founding fathers, some of them were not Bible thumpers. You know, some of them did not believe in the virgin birth. They did not believe in the miracles. They didn't believe in the deed of Christ. And yet they said, look, if Christianity collapses, the country's toast.
Well, we have everything in here, and we talked about the crisis of governance of all kinds. But do you trust the United States federal government? Only 20% of evangelical Christians say yes.
So
36% of Protestants
don't. 80% of evangelicals do not trust the federal government.
Yeah, well, some of them are not sure, but yeah, I mean, the vast majority of them.
And what about the Protestants? What about them?
36% trust. That's not very high, but it's almost twice what evangelical Christians, and it's pretty much in line with basically everybody, because nobody trusts the government. The point is that the signal lies with evangelicals, and Protestants basically just look like an independent swath of America. It's like the religion doesn't even matter.
Wow. Okay, amazing. When will your article be out?
We're trying to get it out tomorrow, so everybody should go to rasmussenreports.com. It's sponsored, so the article will be in front of the paywall. People can download the crosstabs, and I'll try and get a video out. But listen, I have 12 polls I'm working on now, so you might have to wait a little bit to get an in-depth recap of this one. It's getting kind of rough.
Absolutely amazing. I'm going to grab some of this and stick this out on my 69 terrestrial Christian stations tomorrow. I would invite you on the show live if you want. You're welcome. It sounds like your plate is full, and I could just as well grab the audio and play it, but I'd like to play a little of this on my 69 Christian stations tomorrow, because my audience, this is in their wheelhouse.
Sure. Yeah, call me up. I'll get on. Okay,
we'll do it. We'll plan on 1 o'clock Central. 1 o'clock Central, write it down. Logan will call you on Skype.
Yep, let's do it.
We'll be on 69 state Christian station, minimum 50,000, 100,000. In fact, D. James Kennedy, Coral Ridge, used to be on there every day for years and years. So our audience will know exactly who it is you're talking about. That's a great group. We like them. So that's awesome. Thank you for all you're doing. And we look forward to talking tomorrow then.
Yeah, great to be here.
You too. Thank you, Mark. Mark Mitchell, head pollster, Rasmussen. Go to the website. There it is right there. And it sounds like it'll all be out there for you tomorrow as well. And then join us at 1 o'clock Central tomorrow. He'll join us for a few minutes before we get our Middle East update and all the other things we do on Fridays, and your calls mixed in there. So another great show tomorrow, 1 o'clock Central on the VCY America Radio Network and right here on worldviewtube.com. Now, before we go to Dr. Naomi Wolf, and I hope by now you have alerted all your friends, because again, you know, she doesn't mess around. Just like, it's just like last night had Laura Logan on, you know, she was right at it. Dr. Naomi Wolf's the same way. It's just buckle up. Here we go. But before we do, we are brought to you by you. Do you have everything you need to communicate? I have no idea what these jokers are planning, but you need to be able to get a hold of your family members. This is a very inexpensive way. You just take this bivvy, you sync it to your cell phone, you text off your cell phone through a satellite down to your family member who has one of these bivvies synced to their phone. That's it. At least you know family is okay. Where you're in communication, you're texting. Now, you can buy 2, get a discount, buy 3 and get a discount, worldviewtalk.com. Get a satellite phone like I have. Okay? Get that and keep it with you and get a Faraday bag for it. And you can text off this as well. Obviously, you can talk, but you can text off that as well. They have solar generators as well. I have the Delta Echo 400. I have the solar generator as the backup to my big old gas Generac. Electric, or not electric, it's Generac, but it's natural gas. But if that goes out, at least I have for, charging cell phones and things like this, so I can at least text through the bivvy, I got my solar generator. You can get one of those too at worldviewtalk.com. They have the bulletproof backpack. They have the blankets that knock down the EMF signals so you can put a laptop in your lap without worrying about that. They have the cell phones that don't track or store your data, all of it at worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.